Hoffman, and welcome to this episode of Data Exposed Live. We actually have a very exciting episode planned for you. On top of talking about SQL Server 2022, we're actually live in Orlando at Live 360, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Bob Ward in person. Bob, thanks so much for coming on the show.
And I don't even know what to say. I mean, we're doing Data Exposed Live at a show called Live. We're actually here in kind of an area of the conference room, in a different part of the conference room, doing the show and broadcasting. So thanks for having me today. I think when we talked about this, it would be a perfect timing to host a show like this. And we've got some rock stars joining us too. I've got some special guests coming on the show.
We definitely have quite a few special guests coming on the show. As you can see today, we're going to cram in as much as we can about SQL Server 2022. We've got at least 5 demos and 5 or 6 guests today. So it's going to be a really great show. Wherever you're streaming from, I want to remind you all to go ahead and give us some questions. Give us comments, reactions, anything you want to share, whether you're coming in through Learn TV, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, or anywhere else. We can access your comments, we can see them, and we can respond either live using our voices or on the chat with you. So please keep those questions, comments coming. Let us know where you're coming from. Last show, we got people from all over the world, so you can also let us know where you're streaming in from. And with that, we did this thing, or y'all did this thing a couple weeks ago, which is launching SQL Server 2022. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed the fact that Data Exposed is a great opportunity for us to talk about SQL Server products and Azure SQL services. So you said, would you record with us some episodes about Data Exposed, kind of a shorter episode? And I've done those. I know my colleague Pedro has also done some of those. But then I'm like, we can do this live at a live conference? So I'd like to talk more today about SQL Server 2022, why it's an important release for Microsoft. But what better way also to talk about the release than tell you about some of the features and your audience some of the features, and then bring along people to demonstrate this other than just me, like people that are part of building the software. I thought that would be kind of a unique way. This release is really important to us, Anna. If you think about SQL Server 2022 overall, what we've told people is it's a very cloud-connected release. The first time ever we have connected SQL Server with things like Managed Instance, Synapse, and Purview to give you disaster recovery, to give you analytics, and to give you security, all from managed PaaS services in Azure. So it's really kind of a next evolution of SQL becoming a hybrid data platform for us. But we also believe that the engine is core to everything we do. So we want to talk about also innovations with you about security, things like SQL Ledger, and performance and availability, things like built-in query intelligence. So if I look across what you're seeing here, it's just the next evolution from what we do edge to cloud, which is a consistent data platform. But now SQL becomes an integrated part of that hybrid data platform. Anna, this is my wheel of power. That's what I call it. Anna's laughing. I call it earlier wheel of power. It really does represent everything we're doing for SQL Server, whether it's what I just talked about being cloud connected, built-in query intelligence, but it also is talking about innovations for the engine and some exciting areas, some things in data virtualization and object storage. So I think it would be best to bring on my colleague, Joe Sack, who's really in charge of what's called the SQL Everywhere team, to get a perspective.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I would love to bring Joe on this show. Hey, Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Bob and Anna, how are you doing?
We are doing really well, and we're excited to bring you on. Bob was just telling me a little bit about SQL Server 2022, and I think he wanted to bring you on to kind of reflect on it as the leader.
Yeah, I mean, Joe is, as people know him in the community for many, many years, in this particular release so far, Joe's been a behind-the-scenes guy, actually, a little bit, which is unusual for him, but it's very powerful. And so, Joe, I would love for you to share the audience as you look at my wheel of power I've built. What are the things that stands out that you really want them to know about SQL Server 2022?
Yeah, you bet, Bob. And I love wheel of power. That's awesome. So really, 2 main themes stand out for me where we really are starting to blur the boundaries between the different offerings. So this is obviously SQL Server 2022 on-premises that everybody is used to for years and years. And as everyone knows, we have our platform as our service, we have infrastructure as a service, we have hybrid offerings under Azure Arc-enabled data services. And you're really seeing this blending. And the 2 things I just want to call out, Bob and Anna, first of all, we're managing a service with millions of databases in platform as a service. And you learn a thing or two when you do that. And so a lot of the insight that comes from managing that many databases, huge scale. All of that engine goodness is landing in SQL Server 2022. So even if you're not going hybrid, you're not connecting to the cloud is actually adding that value to SQL Server 2022. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is we know that there are areas where analytics, for example, customers are moving analytics to cloud in droves. So we see a lot of movement there. And so how can we facilitate that? How can we make it easier to move to the cloud and build that bridge from SQL Server 2022 to Synapse to Azure SQL Managed Instance for DR? So wherever we have cloud as the beneficial place to land your workload, we're creating that bridge, and whatever we're learning in the cloud, we're bringing back into the product.
Awesome, cool. I love it. I'm so excited about SQL Server 2022, you know, to the point where I'm asking, like, how do I get hands-on with this, Joe? Like, how can I get started?
Yeah, so we have an early adoption program link that I think is at the end of this session. And so sign up, be specific about your workloads. We're in the early phases, so the various PMs on the team are each grabbing a few customers, and we're going to help shepherd that through into public preview. Once we're at public preview, everybody gets access to the bits. And rest assured, if you're eager to test it out, you will have that opportunity, and we would love your feedback along the way.
Awesome, cool. That sounds great. I am excited to get hands-on. Hopefully I can make it into the EAP. We'll see if I can work my way around that.
There's an early plug for Anna to get the EAP on the air. Joe, she put you on the spot on the show.
Top of queue right after this call. Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome. And we're already seeing some good reception in our comments that people are excited about 2022. Sure. Joe, just thanks so much for coming on and telling us a little bit about it.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. And I want to make sure the audience knows that we're just starting the journey. It is called SQL Server 2022, and we're in 2021. So, you know, I'm sure people want to know, like, when is it going to release? I make this funny comment, it's a little tongue in cheek, that we won't miss the name. So I know people don't think it's all that funny. But yeah, I mean, we haven't disclosed any of those dates, so it will be sometime next calendar year. But we look forward to using the preview program to get really direct feedback on how to make sure everything we're showing here on the Wheel of Power really shows up well for customers. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how this is going to land as well.
Awesome. Okay, so what else you got?
Well, let's talk about one of the cloud connected features here. Let's talk about, Joe just mentioned about analytics. And one of the challenges customers face is, I want to use analytics. I want to use something like Synapse, but I got to copy my data from SQL Server all the time. And my operational workloads are affected when I try to do analytics on the SQL Server side. So wouldn't it be cool if SQL Server could detect changes to data I designate, automatically feed that into SQL pools in Synapse, and now I use the full power of a data warehouse to actually access that query. And then additionally, why not combine what I'm doing there with the power of Synapse for things like in the data lake, for Spark pools, for machine learning, for Power BI, all that beauty of Synapse now comes into play, and my SQL Server workloads can focus on the operational pieces. So one of the rock stars here that I work with is the owner of this feature, Tokus, and I thought it'd be fun to bring her on to show what this looks like.
Yeah, okay. Well, let me see if she's here. Oh, hello, Mina.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me. Hi.
Yeah, of course. How are you?
Great. Thanks for inviting.
So Bob was just telling us a little bit about Synapse Link for SQL Server 2022. Can you tell us a little bit about it from your perspective? And then if you have something to show us, that would be cool too.
Yeah.
Sure. So as Bob mentioned, we are hearing a common challenge, like there's huge amount of data accumulated in every organization. And then that's a very valuable asset. So customers are thinking how we can make the best use of it. So how we can generate insights and then improve our business processes. So that requires a great modern data integration technology, right? So Synapse Link is addressing that problem very well. So it's enabling a Microsoft managed link from SQL Server to Azure Synapse, which is a great big data analytics and data warehouse solution on Azure. And then it's a continuous flow from your SQL Server to Synapse Analytics. So it will support all the incremental changes fed to Synapse continuously. It's definitely fine-tunable, so you can make it working with every 5 seconds versus 5 minutes versus 15 minutes according to your use case. And my favorite part is is coming with a new technology we call change feed, making SQL Server a change publisher. So nobody needs to pull constantly to get the incremental changes and then add additional load on the operational workload. SQL Engine, it's becoming a change publisher itself and pushing all the data, all the changes to data by observing the transactional log. So this is really revolutionary, really great feature. So yeah, we can see it in action. So we can switch to demo.
Awesome.
Here we are in Synapse Studio connected to Synapse Analytics Workspace. Switching to Integrate Hub brings us to Synapse Link Connections. Link Connection SQL Server 2022 link is from a source SQL Server database to target Synapse SQL database. Source SQL Server is connected to Synapse Workspace with a linked service. This linked service connects local SQL Server VoIP important database to Synapse Workspace via self-hosted integration runtime. Self-hosted integration runtime runs on premises and handles incoming calls from Azure Synapse Workspace. With self-hosted integration runtime part of Synapse Link architecture, SQL Server only needs to establish outbound connectivity to Azure. The other linked service part of Synapse Link configuration is for Landing Zone. Landing Zone is an Azure Data Lake storage account linked to Synapse Workspace. Landing Zone is used as a buffer area for Synapse Link. SQL Server will publish all data to Landing Zone, and internal ingestion service will pick and ingest into Synapse SQL pools. The target database for Synapse Link for SQL Server 2022 is Synapse SQL Dedicated Pools. Synapse SQL Dedicated Pools are also known as SQL DW formerly. It is a distributed query system for T-SQL that enables data warehousing and data virtualization and extends T-SQL to streaming and machine learning. Now, let's switch to Monitor Hub and check this active status of Synapse Link. As seen here, SQL Server 2022 link is running healthy since 11:15. And two Synapse Link tables named vehicles and vehicle stock items are actively replicating from source to target. We can use Data Hub to interact with Synapse Link tables. Synapse Link tables are very similar to regular Synapse SQL pool tables, except that they are read-only. Because a background link activity, keep updating them with changes from SQL Server. Here we can use Synapse Studio to query Synapse Link tables. Synapse Studio displays all the data in Synapse Link tables. Now let's switch to Source SQL Server and update the source table by inserting a new vehicle. We will insert a new vehicle in Dallas, and we will add more stock items in our vehicle in Waco. Because vehicle table is linked to Synapse Workspace, we can see these updates replicated in Synapse SQL pool near real time. Let's refresh one more time. Now Dallas is inserted and also is replicated to Synapse SQL DW. Let's talk about the magic going behind the scenes. Once Synapse Link is enabled, Synapse Workspace will make a call to self-hosted integration runtime installed on premises. Self-hosted integration runtime will run new store procedures on SQL Server and enable change feed. With that, SQL Server will publish all data and incremental changes to Landing Zone, and internal ingestion service will pick and ingest them into Synapse SQL dedicated pools. With this decoupled publisher and subscriber architecture, Synapse Link can scale to any size workload and still achieve near real-time latency. Change feed is coming with Synapse Link to configure SQL Server as a change publisher for Synapse. Enabling change feed will start exporting an initial snapshot and trigger capturing of incremental changes of the data by observing the log file. With change feed, Synapse Link supports minimum impact and minimum interference with the active workload running on SQL Server. Going back to Synapse Studio. As Synapse is seamlessly integrated with other Azure services, now Synapse link tables can be queried with Power BI. This Power BI report visualizes the data in vehicle table by showing the locations of the vehicles on map. Because Synapse link tables are replicated near real time, simply by refreshing the report, we will be able to reach the latest up-to-date state of data. Without running any ETL, without managing any pipeline, we can see Dallas is added in the map, and then the vehicle is increased by the added stock items. Synapse link tables can also be queried with Synapse Spark Pools. Spark Pools in Azure Synapse include a variety of packages for data science, including machine learning. When combined with built-in support for notebooks, you have an environment for creating machine learning applications. This is an example showing anomaly detection for vehicle temperature based on the data on vehicle Synapse link table.
Wow, Vinay, that was so cool. I think it's pretty powerful how you were able to take data from SQL Server, bring it into Synapse, kind of see the updates happening in the Power BI, and then on top of that, you were using, I think, some Spark notebooks to do some anomaly detection, which is so cool. I mean, it's just really showing you the power of the things you can do with this.
Definitely, it's very cool. And then that part of the demo credit is for Bob Ward.
Yeah, but the coolest thing about her demo, it had the state of Texas in there. Did you see that? There was state of Texas map. I love that she incorporated Texas into the demo. Perfect.
I wanted to extend it to Turkey, but I couldn't do it. It's restricted to the United States.
Well, you know your audience, so I'm sure all the Texas people and Bob Ward fans are happy about that.
Exactly.
Vinay, thanks so much. This is really cool, and we're looking forward to seeing what else comes here.
Definitely, thank you.
Awesome, cool. Wow. Okay, so
There's more.
there can't be more.
There's more. There's a lot more actually. So remember our wheel of power? We start with cloud connected. That was an example. And then I think the next area that's super exciting is intelligent query processing, built-in query intelligence. And it all starts with the query store, Anna. Now the query store is going to be on by default for new databases. Support for read replicas, a huge request from customers. And then what we're going to do, besides offering query hints as well to shape plans instead of plan guides, we're going to integrate query store in some scenarios with intelligent query processing. Now, I call this the next generation of IQP. Okay. Joe Sack calls it the third generation. We go back and forth every day, third gen, next gen. It's the next generation, Anna, of IQP.
You're just saying you win.
I'm just saying I win. But here's the key. Look at this, what it says on the slide. This is about getting faster and not changing the code. We're keeping the tradition of what we started in the cloud, did in SQL 17 and 19, and putting in SQL 2022. And there's features here that you see that are common problems, either max degree of parallelism, cardinal estimation, or parameter-sensitive plan optimization. All of these type functionalities are all about getting faster, no code changes. Now, PSP, for example, doesn't require query store, but some of these use the power of the query store to make it faster. Now, there's no better person in the world than to bring right now on and do a demonstration of this than Pedro Lopes, my friend Pedro.
Awesome. Yeah, let me bring him on. Hey, Pedro, how's it going?
Hi, Bob. Hi, Anna. Glad to be here.
We are thrilled to have you here. So Bob's been telling me a little bit about what's new in performance for SQL Server 2022, and he says you might be able to show us something.
Yes, and it's only scratching the surface. So let's get to a demo then. I'm going to show you today C feedback. C stands for cardinality estimation. So if you want to know all about cardinality estimation and those internals of the engine, go to this short URL here, aka.ms SQL CE, and you'll get the scoop there. Okay, so jumping right to the demo, I've set up a X event session that'll give us some insights into how this feature works and see the power and the improvements that we'll get through running this feature. So I'll start this CE feedback X event session, and I'm going to watch live data. Let's switch back here. And what I'm going to do here is running a query that will trigger one of the scenarios. So we have three scenarios that we are covering in this first version of the feature. One is correlation analysis. The other one is joint containment analysis. And the third one is called row goal analysis. These are mouthfuls. Again, all the information is in that short link there. Okay, so how this scenario today is called row goal, and that's an optimization inside the engine that when we detect presence of a certain keywords like top, in this case 1500, or fast hint, or an in clause or exist clause, SQL Server goes to a optimization where, okay, we'll calculate the number of rows that are needed to read just that amount of rows that's being hinted, if you will, in this case through the top keyword. And if there's a large amount of rows that match the predicate, we'll just need to read very few pages to come up with the result. So it's very, very fast. However, sometimes the data is not totally uniform. We end up reading a lot more than anticipated. And that's when we have this optimization row goal working against us. So that's what we're going to see today. So let me run this a few times, and we'll see the kind of execution plan we have. So we have an execution plan that does, let me bump this up a little bit, does a couple of cluster index scans, so quite a hefty operation, and does a merge join between them. And it returns the top 1500 as intended, right? So what happens then is, let me just flush the query store. One thing that I didn't mention, but Bob did, is this is one of the features that is totally dependent on the query store. In other words, we're not only storing information in the query store, leveraging information that's performance related from the query store, but also using query store hint support to use this feature. So let me flush the query store. And to prove to you that we have these 15 executions in cache, actually 17 because I executed a couple of times before, we see here 17 executions of this query plus the one I just ran. Okay, so this next execution will trigger the feature, see feedback analysis. And this is the analysis phase. And of course, this would happen because it always does, right?
Of course.
Let me quickly, I just run this, right? But this always happens.
You got it, Pedro, you got it.
Very quickly go through this. Let me start the session again. And watch live data again. Let's go. All right. So running this 15 times. Execution plan, the merge join, and the cluster index scans, as I mentioned. Let me flush the query store and just make sure that I have my executions in cache. There they are. Perfect. And now this next execution should do the see feedback analysis. And it's not doing it. This is great. Sorry, folks, the demo gods are really against us. I don't know what happened.
Oh,
this is working just fine.
That's all right. You know, one thing I'll maybe ask while you're looking at that, we say like we announced SQL Server 2022, like it's not ready yet, right?
Well, but you know what? Since
Not
we're
by
on private preview, it's ready for a lot of people who sign up right now to work. Imagine you signing up for private preview, you work with this connect, you're going to connect with Pedro to go look at the CE feedback directly and see if that helps your workload, right? One of the comments Pedro's looking at that is, Pedro, if you're almost ready, let us know. But one thing I should tell you this, and I've said this before, when I first heard this list of features from Joe and Pedro, this is a bunch of stuff that people struggle with today. This isn't like Pedro and Joe sat in a room somewhere and said, oh, I think CE feedback sounds good. Like literally customers through CSS, the field, user voice feedback have said CE feedback, max stop, parameter sensitive plan optimization. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Pedro did. There's also a data episode, a show with Pedro, I think, coming up. On this topic where he dives in deeper. So this is just the tip of the iceberg what we're doing in this space.
Okay, I got it working now.
Yay.
Oh, nice.
I got it working now.
Let's see it, Pedro.
Great. Okay, so I'll run through the first stage very, very quickly, setting up the environment here. My apologies for this. The demo gods are really hitting when we are in production, if you will. Okay, so setting up the X event capture. Let me start it up. Watch live data. There we go. And now I'm going to run this the first 15 times, and you'll see the same thing. So we have the execution plan, merge, join, cluster, the next scan. Let me flush the query store. And now this next execution will trigger the analysis phase. Now, analysis is the event that we piggyback on the application's execution of the queries to find where are these blind spots that we can optimize. So in this case here, I see that my plan ID 2 for query ID 2 in the query store will probably benefit from actually disabling the optimizer row goal. Okay, so this is just entering the queue, if you will. The next execution of the same query, so sending in by the application, will actually trigger the validation phase. And the validation is really interesting because this is where we test proof what we've done. In this case, look here. So obviously same query ID, same plan ID. The original CPU time was 33 seconds. And we've gotten this down to 15 seconds of execution time. No, you didn't have to do anything to the query. You didn't have to be a wizard with cardinality estimation. It just happened for you. So if we, as the application continues to send in executions, look at this. The plan changed, and we're now actually switched one of the index scans to a non-clustered index scan. We're doing a hash match for the inner join, and it's much faster. If we look at the sys query store query hints, we see that now this query hint is in fact being used. And we see here that CE feedback is the feature that implemented this hint. So there you have it. You're not a genius. You're not a wizard with CE. The system just does this for you. Just one example.
Wow, that's awesome, Pedro. And I love the theme that you guys are always embracing, which is faster with no code changes. That's what I want to hear, and I'm sure a lot of people want to
As a developer, you want to know that, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
So thanks so much, Pedro, for showing us. I know you got some other performance stuff to show us. Small plug. Pedro's coming on again next week, and we're going to do a deep dive in all the performance enhancements to SQL Server 2022. So thanks so much, Pedro, and looking forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, Anna, did you know there's more there even? I'm not nowhere today, but there's more even what he showed. And I love the persistence theme, right? Notice that it's all about like, let's store what we did so it just stays around even when the server restarts.
Right.
I have some more. Remember the wheel of power?
All right.
thing?
What's next?
So what do I call this area? What's the term I use?
The meat and potatoes.
The meat and potatoes of SQL Server. Hey, we always have to innovate in these areas, right? If we don't do this, we don't have an engine. Because remember, Anna, this is the same engine edge to cloud. So we have to innovate here. So in the security space, we're still doing great stuff. We have something really cool called SQL Server Ledger we've been working on. Excited to see that technology, tamper evidence type ledger technology with tables and SQL. In the scalability space, it's all about making you faster. This is, again, with no code changes. You know, one of the areas that people just get killed on is latches and tempdb. So we're working more in that space here. We've done some things in the past. We're also making it faster even in this release. And then the availability section, really cool functionality with multi-write replications with automated conflict detection, cross-platform snapshot backups. Several of our partners are excited about that one. Snapshot backups without using volume snapshot service, and even partnering with Intel to make backup compression faster, better compression, and less CPU overhead for your entire workload. So this is just the beginning of, you know what? There's
Seems
actually,
like a lot, actually.
Wait, there's a whole nother, where's my other slide? There's a whole other slide with more stuff. Don't have time today, because you told me that, Bob, you got to keep it, going live short. But I think there's nobody I can think of better I've worked with the team than Mr. David Pless to talk about this.
Oh, yeah. We've had no stranger to David. Hey, David. Thanks for
coming
again.
Hey, Bob, Anna, how are y'all doing?
Okay,
Great.
So Bob was just telling me about a lot of stuff, so I'm actually not sure where we're going next. But
by the way, I don't either. I don't know what he's going to demo. So.
All right, so faster with no code changes. How about that? A little bit
Can
of
we
that.
do that?
Yeah, yes, and I would love to talk about it. And I have a slide that's kind of set the stage really quick, if y'all don't mind. So we know tempdb is one of 4 system databases, incredibly important, right? And if it's slow, SQL's slow. Yeah, and we know that tempdb can be used for global or local temporary tables and indexes, store procedures, table variables, table valued functions, cursors, a whole lot, right? Now, it's super important that we get SQL Server or SQL Server tempdb very fast so we can have scalability. And now we've made improvements. Let's start with SQL Server 2016. We've addressed a lot of the best practices early on, right in the setup, and we made it easier with temporary tables and table variables being cached to allow operations to drop and recreate much quicker and reduce page allocation, metadata contention. When there's multiple tempdb files, all the files auto-grow at the same time by the same amount. So you don't need 1117 or 1118 trace flags anymore. In 2019, and this is really kind of setting the stage for what we want to talk about, we eliminated most of the PFS contention with concurrent PFS updates. And we also brought the ability to opt in, this is going to be important, to the new memory optimized tempdb metadata capability. Now, you saw it on the slide that Bob had, and what we have in SQL Server 2022 is system page latch concurrency enhancements. So really want to talk about is the GAM contention that we get sometimes when there's many threads that want to allocate or deallocate extents on the same GAM page, because GAM, the updates are serialized and each thread needs to wait for another thread to release their update latch held on the GAM, and then they themselves obtain the same latch while they're making their update to the GAM page. And so we have this contention with, like, you see, like repetitive create and drop operations, table variables, work tables, associated with like cursors and order bys and group bys. So we can see this quite a bit, and you can see it even in SQL Server 2019. But we've got some enhancements in SQL Server 2022 that I'd really like to show you.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I have 2 VMs. Okay. Now these are Pam's favorite E-series VMs. We have
Nice.
8 processors. They're following all the tempdb best practices. I did not opt in to in-memory OLTP metadata contention. That's important. You'll see why. So what I'm going to do is an OStress workload. I'm already running a PowerShell script. It's doing a streaming data set that we'll take a look at. Don't worry about the PowerShell. That's not important. It's the outcome that I'll show you that'll be interesting. So I'm going to run some OStress, and it's just going to put some pressure on tempdb. And this is the 2019 VM. And I'm going to run this page res cracker. This function became available in 2019, so we can get some more details of what's happening with this kind of contention. And when I run this, you might not see anything at first, but then you start seeing things like this. And as I'm kind of looking at this, I can run this one more time. Actually, I tried to zoom in. There we go. So I don't know. Can y'all see that well, Bob, Anna? Can you see that there's a lot of GAM contention going on here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I could keep refreshing and I'm going to see the same thing. So I'm going to go over to the 22 SQL Server 2022 instance, and I'm going to do the exact same thing here. Same machine, just the only difference is it's SQL 2022. And I'm going to run that same query, right? That is leveraging this function page res cracker, and I'm going to run this a few times, and just nothing. It's just not getting the GAM contention.
But there was some before, though. There was a bunch before.
Right.
Yeah.
There's definitely some on the 2019 instance. Okay. Now what is I'm going to show you, and this is why I have that streaming data set. It really kind of illustrates this.
Look at this.
This is what we're seeing on the 2019 instance. So what this is doing is real time. I'm running this gauge, and it's running every so often, and so you're seeing the contention. Now I'm also doing that old school, System OS waiting tasks, and I'm inserting into a table. Historically, since I think I've been running this since Wednesday, I ran this at the exact same time between the instances. I have about 84,000 instances of latch contention on the GAM page, and the longest wait was almost 700 milliseconds.
Wow.
Now, you'll see some of these spikes will go up to, sometimes get 100 plus, 64 there. Let's take a look at the 2022 environment. It's not broke. You can see that it got this little spike. Since Wednesday, I've had 121 scenarios. I've taken a look at this. It's all metadata contention that would have been resolved had I opted in for the in-memory OLTP that's available in 2019. Anna, Bob, this is just one more pillar of contention that we've essentially removed in SQL Server 2022. And you can see the difference is pretty significant historically as well as real time.
And just to clarify, like, what do people have to do to get this?
Well, first of all, there is no code changes. All you need to do
No
is to
code
get to
changes.
no code changes.
No
All you
code
need to do
changes,
is get to
yes.
SQL Server 2022. And I am running this on the CTP 1.0 right now. So if someone is part of the EAP program, they'd be able to leverage this now. Look at this big spike here. It's suffering quite a bit right now with this contention.
Oh, wow. Wow. And you're just not going to see that in 2022.
No, this is what you're going to see.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I'm glad I got that
Power
little
BI
spike.
there.
I'm glad I got this little spike, so y'all know I'm not cheating. This is yeah.
But wait a minute, David. So on that one, if you had tempdb metadata optimization on, I wouldn't see that one.
Right, and that's literally the reason I turned it off, is just so I could have a little bit of activity.
Are you trying to rid the world of latch contention for tempdb, like save the world?
If that is the goal, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, one more pillar down. So
Nice.
yeah.
David, one more question. Some of our viewers, I mean, myself included, it's hard to keep up with all the updates. You mentioned Pam's new VM series that we're really excited about. Can you take a moment and just tell us like what that is in case people are going to run SQL Server 2022?
Oh geez, what is the name that we had? It's the E series. I think it's the EDS v5.
EBSV.
Yeah, there's a B in there.
EB. It starts at EB. Pam is going to be. She's watching this, going, "You guys, I told you the name."
I wasn't ready for the name, but that first of all, that memory optimized that group keeps getting better. And that particular E series, I think it's the EDS. There's a B in there? I can't remember. It's an alpha. Didn't Pam say it's in alphabetical order?
Something like that. Yeah,
something like that. So look for the D for the taking care of the disk speed, the S and the M for high memory scenarios. It's the E series is what you'd want to do for scalability. Now I'm not using that VM.
Right? She's got a blog talking about this, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Definitely go read the blog, and we're doing a video that should be coming out soon about that one as well.
Another data exposed plug.
Oh,
is
wow.
that what you're saying, Anna?
Oh, well, we do a lot of SQL VM.
That's why she got the question in. She wanted the plug for data exposed.
You can check them out on our YouTube.
Yeah.
And y'all can see like the tipping point happened, and now we're just getting the 2019 VM is getting quite a bit of contention here. And again, at the same time, same workload. This is what we're seeing on 2022.
Leave it to Pless to throw Power BI reports. That's pretty slick, man. That's a nice demo, Dave.
All right.
Nice.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, David, and looking forward to seeing what else is new from you.
All right. Thank you very much.
So, Anna, can I do one last area?
More.
Just one last thing.
I don't know.
My wheel of power.
Updates.
We are melting brains today. That's what we do. So, do you remember in SQL 19 we had Polybase? We had this data virtualization concept. So go get data where it lives and go move the data. Yes. And part of that was unstructured data. Things like files sitting around in Hadoop systems and so forth. So what we're doing now, we're going to use REST APIs to go after similar data like that in like S3 compatible systems. And look at this. You're still going to be able to use the external table concept or open row set so it looks like a table, but we'll natively support Parquet. First time we've really done that. Wow. So now if you have a Parquet file, which is kind of like a column store in a file thing, right? We recognize that and we just figure it out. Or Delta table lake type formats, which is another popular unstructured type file. So now you can use the same Polybase concepts to go after data using T-SQL, but the data is going to live in these other storage locations. So as we were building this, we found out from talking to partners and looking at the industry that backups can benefit from this. So instead of just backing up to disk or blob storage for Azure, you can now back up a native SQL database and restore it from S3 compatible systems. Wow. And these icons, this is pretty powerful because a lot of customers are now moving to object storage, this object storage concept, which is not like a file system. It's more efficient. And look at all these icons, right? These are partners of ours, including us as well in Azure Data Lake, that support S3. So now you can do backups to that. So as we've been thinking about this technology, I thought it'd be appropriate to talk to Melony Qin, who leads us in this space to figure out what this looks like and do a demo.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Before we bring Melony on, I have a quick question.
Okay.
Would you call this Polybase Next Gen? Or is it Polybase?
You know, I built a slide earlier where I think I called it Polybase Next Gen. I like the Next Gen thing. It is. It's come on, it is. It's using a new technology like REST APIs to be more efficient, to go after this data and supporting new file types and all these icons. Yeah, it's the next gen.
Awesome. Polybase was probably one of the most, if not the most popular feature in SQL Server 2019. So I'm excited to see what it is in 2022. And with that, let's bring Melony on to tell us more about it.
So in SQL Server 2022, we have extended our list of external connectors to support S3 compliant object storage. Now, the backup to URL syntax supports backup and restore capability with S3 object storage. The same S3 connector also supports query data in object storage using either OpenRow or external table syntax. S3 compliant object storage is object-level storage where data is managed as objects. Our S3 connectors enables object storage integration by implementing S3 standard REST API. There are so many object storage solutions in the market, such as Minnow, Dell, ECS, Pure Storage, and Cloudian. They all exposed a REST API endpoint that conforms to the S3 standard. And those software-defined storage solutions can be deployed in various locations. For instance, on premises, in a private data center, in a cloud-hosted virtual machine, or a Kubernetes cluster. So for this first example, we'll use Minnow as a storage provider. Minnow is a cloud-native, software-defined object storage who provides solutions on premises and in Azure. Let's imagine one of our customers, Contoso Corporation, want to store the compensation information of the employees in SQL Server 2022, and they plan to schedule a full database backup for their SQL Server instance. But this instance contains data that cannot be moved to the cloud due to regulations. To separate compute and storage layers, Contoso Corporation deployed an object storage on premises. In their case, they use Minnow as a backup location. To backup to Minnow, you will need the S3 REST endpoint and a proxy user. Here, we have created a user named Contoso user. This user has been given read-only and write-only permission to a bucket in Minnow. The read permission is needed to check for the existence of the file, and the write permission authorizes the creation of a backup file. We store this user in SQL Server using a credential. The credential contains the S3 endpoint, the target bucket, and the user information to authenticate our access. We'll use the backup to URL syntax to backup the Contoso Corp database. Here, we'll use the S3 endpoint, and we can see the backup progress by printing the stats. Now, let's go to Minnow Web Console. We can see the backup is there. When it comes to restore, similarly, we use the restore database syntax and the same S3 endpoint. We print in the stats. Yeah, now you can see a database has been restored successfully. Let's now take a look at how we can query data stored in object storage. In SQL Server 2019, we have implemented data virtualization over relational and non-relational data sources. In SQL Server 2022, this functionality has been extended to include the S3 connector. We can now use the external table and OpenRow syntax to support SQL queries over S3 compliant object storage via S3 REST endpoint. Before we can use the data virtualization in SQL Server, we must first install and enable Polybase. Once it's enabled, it is a simple process of creating a master key and a database scope credential to contain a proxy user. Let's just assume that our customer Contoso service manages all the call centers across the country. they have implemented a data lake using object store. The tables in this data lake store data in Parquet file format. To access your data, we'll need an external data source to identify the endpoint, binding our credential to the endpoint. Let's go ahead to create an external table. External tables need a little bit more configuration on the way. And you need to create an external file format. With those extra efforts, you get more benefits, such as more granular security controls, strengthen the definition of the column. Above that, it also improves the quality of plans by creating statistics on columns, which can lead to better performance. Let's go ahead and execute a query. Here you can see you get the result in return after selecting over Parquet file using the external table. Likewise, the same dataset stored in Parquet file can be queried using open row set syntax. Notice how with open row sets can read the schema directly from the file, which means you don't have to define the table columns. Thanks, everyone. Back to you, Bob.
Thanks so much. That was really cool, Melony. We did get some questions on that one. A couple of people were saying things like, wow, this is pretty useful. This could open things to multi-cloud. And someone did ask a question, Bob, maybe you can help with this one. They said, so is this to back up? I think this is more at the beginning of the demo. Is this to back up from on-prem into a cloud?
Could be, because these S3 providers could be cloud-based or they could be within your data center. Anything that's, so S3 is a new protocol for doing things like object storage. And so it doesn't really matter where it exists. As long as it's S3 compatible, it could be in a cloud, and an absolutely new way to do backup restore there, no question.
Awesome, very cool. Let me see, I know there were some other questions and comments in here. I think people are pretty interested in seeing this this stuff. Also, some comments on the book. I'm gonna pull this up. This is just a shameless plug. Robert says, FYI, I just purchased both Anna's Azure SQL Practical Dev book and Bob's Azure SQL Revealed book. Black Friday sale. So
one of the things I love about being on Data Exposed Live is live things like that. What a great plug. Thank you for the plug for the book.
And our friend Simon said he's stuck on chapter 5 of my book. Thanks, Simon.
Hey, and maybe I should write a book on SQL 2022.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time you wrote a book about a product.
I have to think about that. I'll think about that. Yeah.
You heard it here first on Data Exposed.
That doesn't mean I'm doing it. I don't
know. I think you just committed.
I did not commit to writing a book. I've written 3 of them. Look, I'm thinking about it. Okay.
All right. Okay. SQL Server 2022. My mind is.
Did I wrap your head around this wheel?
There's so much going on.
Yeah, exactly.
How can I learn more?
Yeah. So we want you to have the resources you need. Although we're in private preview, so right now it's more of you learning the capabilities of what's going on, and then joining the program if it's appropriate for you to dive in and try it out. When we go to public preview, that's when it's going to be downloadable for everyone to try it out. But we want people to prepare themselves to see, because people plan ahead, Anna, a long time in advance. They want to know, should I be using 2022? So now you see it's possible. Now you think about your upgrade plans. Maybe you want to wait for 2022 versus maybe going to 19, for example. So this first link is the main web page. We'll keep this up to date as we move through the preview program. All the resources you kind of need to learn about our capabilities, great stuff to kind of, get started, right? If you want to sign up for EAP, and Joe really kind of emphasized this, we really intend this more for customers who want to engage us directly. It's a really cool opportunity. Kendall Van Dyke from our team has done an amazing job putting together a Teams channel and a GitHub repo. But this is where you sign up and interact with us directly, and that's how to sign up right there. And then, Anna, the Microsoft Mechanics people are pretty cool, almost as cool as your show.
Almost.
Almost as cool. Jeremy Chapman is going to okay. So you're equally cool, Jeremy. I did with them a mechanics video. They've got the coolest animations in the world to put together. So go here to see more information about SQL 2022. We have a webinar that's broadcasting today. And did you know I can be in a studio and you can be in a studio in Redmond and be here at this conference at the same time? Did you know it's possible?
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, so we're going to teleport right after here to the webinar. That's today. We'll be live answering questions. The team will be on live answering your questions about the technology. And then, there's a show called Data Exposed. How'd that get on this slide right here? Maybe you can learn more about this technology. Are we going to do more, you think?
Yeah, I mean, we are doing a mini series on Data Exposed. Our recorded episodes on Thursday, so definitely check those out. And then Pedro's coming on next week to do a deep dive on performance capabilities in SQL Server 2022 and Azure SQL.
And maybe next year I'll bring on some of the other folks that you saw today. We'll do other Data Exposed. I think I saw a link for the mini series. That's kind of cool. You're calling it the mini series. I get my own. We get our own mini series. That's actually really cool. And we're also going to show up at other events. We've got an event coming up in December in Las Vegas Live, and we're going to talk about SQL 2022. You can imagine we're going to double down and talk about this. I even just signed up for a new DBA Fundamentals virtual session for the world to see on YouTube in December. And then next year, you can imagine, we're just going to go nuts. We're just going to keep talking about this until we release the product.
Awesome. I can't wait. You know, we actually have some time left. We've got a lot of questions coming in. Let's see. Let's take a look at some of these questions. Someone's commenting on the book already. So like news is out.
What?
I guess you should call your
No,
publisher.
what do you say? That they're saying I'm writing it?
Yeah, they're
Oh
writing
gosh,
for it.
A-Press is going to figure it out. I would commit. I haven't signed anything. I'm not doing it. I might want to do it.
Let me do this. I'm going to bring everyone back on because we had such a
the rock star. I call them this is the rock stars of SQL, is it not?
I'm going to bring you all on. And what we're going to do is take some questions. So let me see some of the questions that we've got in. You guys have been putting a lot of chatter in, which is great. So I think this first question, Joe, might be a good question for you. Can we expect other features and scenarios that you haven't shown today?
Ooh.
Yes, that's the short answer. So typically what you'll see is, we have things that are over the line, on the bubble, some things that are a little bit before the bubble. And so we want to make sure we're confident everything's going through the right testing, compatibility matrix, everything in the behind the scenes engineering side of the world that we're dealing with. So yes, there will be some additional announcements as we go through on the road to GA.
We heard it here live. Joe just said yes. All right, Joe, we got to figure out what it is.
Yes.
Okay, let me see what else is here. David, there's a question. I think this would be good for you. They were talking about query store hints. It's in SQL DB, so is it in SQL Server 2? How does this work?
Yeah, so it's one of those things that's really important that we talked about earlier is that query store is on by default, right? So this is we're extending on top of what the query store capability, and again, avoiding code changes. So being able to influence a plan and improve a plan's performance, like for example, being able to recompile a query, capping the memory grant size when needed, controlling the maximum degree of parallelism, adjusting the compatibility level when needed, so you can get more granular on a particular query and then be able to take advantage of the default compatibility level across the database, to giving a more surgical approach to performance. So it's a really powerful capability without having to make code changes addressing the query directly in that way.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah, we've also done some Data Exposed episodes on query store hints, so we're really getting good.
Does every answer include a Data Exposed plug?
Data Exposed video for everything. You get a video.
You get a video. Right.
Okay, let's see what else we got. Here's a question. Looks like, Mine, this might be a good question for you. It says, which change types will be fed to Synapse, or what? Can you tell me more about the landing zone? So two questions I think maybe you might be able to help us with.
Sure. Yeah. Change time. So all the ML changes, like insert, update, deletes, and some DDL, like table scope DDL, add column, drop column, alter column type. So this is actually very exciting. So most of the changes will be fed.
Nice.
We're very excited about that. Yeah. And landing zone. So landing zone is a very useful component as part of the architecture. So SQL Server is not directly writing or like publishing to the SQL DW. It's using a buffer area. So it's very useful both to scale the architecture and also to make the publishing and ingestion asynchronous, so they don't have to wait for each other. So this way we can optimize the latency at any scale, right? So we can still achieve like very minimum latency at any scale of workload. And landing zone will have some files directly exported from SQL. and customers' own landing zone. So they will be a customer-owned storage account. They can look at it, they can observe the files, and they can read them. Definitely, please don't write, so it will interfere with the whole link. But they will be Parquet files for initial latex for, and CSVs for the incremental changes. So they will be able to read from it. It's also a powerful additional feature.
Check that out. So we read the transaction log, we put it in Parquet or CSV in Azure Storage, which has redundancy built into it. We have an ingestion engine, Synapse, that reads from that, puts it into SQL pools.
Exactly.
And I just write to SQL at that point, man, right? I just write my transactions to SQL, and all that happens.
That's awesome.
Behind the scenes, it's magical.
I love it.
I like
Magic, no
another developer who likes
No hands.
Magical.
No, hands free, right, Pedro?
Okay, we got one comment that they're excited. SQL Server 2022, exciting times. Yes, it is exciting times. I think we have time for a few more questions. Oh, this is a good one. Someone asked, how will Query Store work on read-only replicas? Joe, maybe can you help us with that one?
Yeah, you bet. This is a pretty popular request. I think somebody mentioned that earlier on this session. Okay, you enable Query Store on a read-write. It's on by default, so you don't really actually have to enable it, but it'll be on by default. But what about your readable secondaries? You will have the ability to turn it on. Once you turn it on, any queries that are hitting that readable secondary will be captured in memory, and then will be fed through back to the read-write replica. Once it's on the read-write replica, it has that round trip where you can see a cohesive view of your read-write and your read-only replica activity. So I can say, okay, this read-only query only ever gets executed on the secondary 18,000 times. Here's the top 3 that I need to optimize. Here's the read-write traffic. So you can get a nice separation of it. All the tools will support it. So dynamic management views will have that single view. The SQL Server Management Studio will be updated. This is on the road to GA, of course. And then things that you would expect with regular Query Store on, like automatic plan regression correction. Interoperability with all these different QP features that we've been talking about for the last 3 generations, and that's the gist of it. That's how it's going to work, and we're pretty excited. Again, this was on. If you looked at our feedback, it was one of the top items again and again.
So Joe, the Query Store data is persisted in the primary still, but you enhance the metadata to know did the query come from the primary or the secondary.
Exactly. So you have the concept of locality. This feature doesn't make it read write on the replicas. It's still a round trip, but we're talking very low latency.
Okay,
awesome.
Nice.
That's very cool. Hey, I have to ask a follow-up question / request, because I know we've talked about this on our show for Azure SQL. Is this something that's on the roadmap for Azure SQL as well?
Yes, it is. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah,
of course.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And I think that's one of the cool things about the SQL Server enhancements and the Azure SQL enhancements. Like, you think about, we almost have like double effort going into these innovations in Azure SQL DB, and then we can bring the ones to SQL Server.
It's the same engine, Anna. This is one of the ways we can pull it off. It's the same core engine that powers Azure SQL and SQL Server, and that's the only way we can do these kind of type things, right?
Yeah. That's very cool. All right. So I saw another question earlier asking about T-SQL improvements. Pedro, is that one you think you might be able to take?
Sure. Yes. So T-SQL is getting some attention as well. We have a few new enhancements regarding that we haven't announced yet. We have a few that have to do with JSON handling. That's coming. And we also have enhancements to existing functions. For example, one that's already documented because it's already in Azure SQL and it will come in SQL Server 2022 is the ability to have an ordinal column in string split, which has been also one of the highest requested feedback items in the last year or so. So that's also coming for SQL Server 2022. And we have others we'll announce in the next few weeks and months. But the short answer is that, yes, it's getting love.
I sense the theme here. And I'm not making this up. It's not a marketing pitch. It's all about customer feedback driving what we're putting in the release. I mean, again, we're not just sitting around going, oh, I think we should put in some ordinal for string functions. We're literally taking feedback saying, I really need that as a developer. You're a developer, you like that. Feedback from developers saying, yeah, we want the T-SQL language to still be the source of language that you know and just extend it for your needs.
Yeah, I love it. Definitely love it. Hey, as we kind of wrap the show, I just want to say thank you all to our viewers, and thanks to these wonderful speakers in front of me.
They are the ones that deserve all the credit. I just talked and they did all the demos.
Thanks so much. Folks are excited about SQL Server 2022. Folks are excited to see Bob happy, so that's an interesting one.
We're happy. Why would they be happy? We had SQL Server. We finally got to tell everybody about this, man. We've been holding it back, right?
Yeah, and my final call to action is just keep following along with what's going on during the EAP program. We got lots more news to share, more updates to come. And with that, I want to close out Data Exposed. Thank you to our viewers. If you're streaming in with us, be sure to go ahead and like this video, leave us a comment, let us know what you think, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we hope to see you next time on Data Exposed.